Welcome to Carib Money Report. I am Kimberly Ram-Calawan. This week in news, high-level conferences dominate the headlines with the IDB Board of Governors meeting convening in Chile and the OECS's Economic Council welcoming its new chairman. All this and much more in this week's episode. It's your Carib Money Report for the last week in March 2025. In the news, Trinidad and Tobago gets some good oil exploration news, while the OECS looks at strategies to reinforce its economy, citing fallout from funding abroad. Much conversation at the OECS's Fourth Economic Council meeting cites additional risk for member states following shift in the U.S. economic policy in recent weeks. In response to these identified, newly installed Chairman St. Vincent and the Grenadines Finance Minister Camilo Gonzalez says shielding the region from these shocks can only come from true integration.
It is a fact that one of our greatest vulnerabilities is the small size of our individual countries. It follows, therefore, that the best way to reduce this vulnerability is to become larger. And the only way that tiny individual islands can become larger is to accelerate the speed, scope, and depth of our regional integration. Integration has always been our shield against external shocks, born from the understanding that we stand stronger together than we do alone.
However, the incoming chairman sounded a warning for member states to adhere to international law when it came to their economies, referring to the curtailment of citizen by-investment programs.
We exist, we are counted, and we are heard because international law says we must be. We defend international law because without it, our survival depends solely on the kindness of strangers. So, obviously, the uncertainty in the U.S. economy related to the policy shifts under the administration of President Trump, and the Honorable Minister of Foreign Affairs and Didicus have spoken to those. And third, they identify the volatility in revenue from citizenship by investment programs, upon which a few countries in our region place very heavy reliance.
In convening the Fourth Council of Ministers Economic Affairs, OECS's Director General Didicus Jules shared its Development Strategy Action Framework and the OECS's plans for safeguarding its future when it comes to food and energy security.
The OECS Development Strategy Action Framework responds with a blueprint for diversification across 10 high-potential sectors, including renewable energy, digital transformation, blue economy, and technology. Food security is a cornerstone of economic independence, reducing our dependence on imported staples and building resilient agriculture value chains. By targeting a minimum of 20% renewable energy installed capacity in each member and associate state by 2030, we not only reduce import dependence, but fortify our economic security.
Inter-American Development Bank President Ian Goldfan announced plans to launch a new campaign targeting the aging population. Speaking at the 2025 annual meetings of the IDB and IDB Invest boards of governors in Santiago, its president shared the IDB initiative expanding quality care program as one also able to drive growth and reduce inequality in the Western Hemisphere.
Our region faces a growing gap in care service that has economic consequences. IDB Cares, or BID Cuida, embodies our commitment to supporting a comprehensive care agenda that can ensure that Latin America and the Caribbean is prepared to seize this moment.
The week-long conference saw SEDIMA's Elizabeth Riley share the Caribbean's perspective on transformational investment needed to build resilience and better disaster management systems.
The pace at which the climate is changing is much faster than the pace at which we're making the investments to build a resilient. And it's critically important for small states because I'd alluded to smaller cumulative events. And what happens with the smaller cumulative events is that they don't attract international support, but they're paid for by national governments. It diverts funds from usual development processes, and it also drives countries deeper into debt. So this is a cycle that has to be broken and can only be done by transformational investment. As we're engaging in the conversations on supporting small states in resilience building, we have to integrate into that conversation a discussion on how we're investing in developing national level capacities, but also regional level capacities in instances where it does not make sense for national governments to develop their own skill sets because the resources are just not there, but it can be more appropriate. It just makes better sense to do it from a regional level.
Representing Ghana, Dr. Vindhya Prasad, Minister of Human Services and Social Security, spoke at how her country was using technology to eliminate poverty.
We have looked at the identification part of the process by using geospatial technology, a little of what Josh spoke of, and we are able to not only identify the vulnerable populations, but we are able to plot the distance people will have to travel to access our services, and also we have quite an extensive hinterland region, and there the terrain is quite challenging. So with that terrain, we have to understand how people can access our services, bearing in mind we want to have inclusivity, that everyone must have equal benefits. But look at how when we integrate or when we interlock, how effective it is moving someone out of poverty, identifying someone who is vulnerable, and ensuring that you're creating financial independence as one mode of looking at it, and also looking at socioeconomic stability holistically by finding all of these different elements that exist among government.
BP Trinidad and Tobago has achieved two major milestones, sanctioning the ginger gas development and exploration success at the Frangipani well. In announcing the news, BPTT described its final investment decision on ginger and discovering gas at Frangipani as the latest demonstrations of upstream activity this year for BP, in line with its strategy to grow its oil and gas business. Ginger will become BPTT's fourth subsea project and will include 4 subsea wells and subsea trees tied back to BPTT's existing Mahogany B platform. First gas from the project is expected in 2027 and will make up one of BP's 10 major projects expected to start up between 2025 and 2027. At peak, development is expected to have the capacity of average gas production of 62,000 barrels of oil equivalent per day. BPTT President David Campbell says the sanction of ginger represents our commitment to continuing the development of resources in our existing acreage and to producing the gas that Trinidad and Tobago and the world needs. Ginger is located approximately 50 miles off Trinidad's southeast coast in waters depths of less than 300 feet. Drilling on the first well began in January and is expected to resume in the fourth quarter of this year. And that was just some of the news making the rounds in the region. Stay with us, much more ahead.
We want you to advertise with us. Join us as the premier business magazine and news outlet covering the Caribbean. Contact us today at 868-783-5094.
Welcome back. The Jamaican Stock Exchange saw quite a few movers this week as it closed off its overall market activity strong, resulting in 55 stocks, of which 24 advanced. Let's take a look at the stock markets in and around the region in your Market Trends segment. Eastern Caribbean Securities Market recorded a volume of 1,100 shares, traded valued at $11,015 EC for the week ending March 28th. TDC Limited had the highest volume of shares traded, capturing more than 50% of the market at 610 shares bought and sold for the week. St. Lucia Electricity Services Limited and St. Kitts Nevis Anguilla National Bank Limited accounted for the second and third highest amount of shares traded at 145 and 140 shares respectively. A total of 5 securities were traded, of which 4 traded firm and 1 advanced by 1.72%. Trans-Jamaican Highway Limited, JMMB Group Limited, and Burrito Investments Limited dominated the JSE once again, as they were the top 3 securities bought and sold this week. The Jamaican Stock Exchange reported a volume of 2,461,539 shares traded for the week ended March 28th, valued at $5,937,888 Jamaican dollars and 57 cents. Trading activity involved 55 stocks, in which 18 declined, with Jamaica Broilers Group falling by 7.49% and Trans-Jamaican Highway Limited at 5.69%. Advances were recorded in 24 stocks, of which the highest were Pulse Investments Limited, which increased by 10.11%, and Maybury Group Limited by 7.34%. The remaining 13 securities traded firm. Barbados Stock Exchange recorded a total of 14,008 shares traded for the week ending March 28th, valued at $28,421 Barbadian dollars and 84 cents. CIBC Caribbean Bank Limited and Emira Deposit Receipt were the 2 that made up the 14,008 shares traded, with only 1 security being Emira Deposit Receipt advancing by 17 Barbadian cents, while all other 26 securities remain unchanged. The Trinidad and Tobago Stock Exchange reported a total of 80,325 put-through transactions, valued at $2,120,996 Trinidadian dollars and 90 cents for this week. Market indices recorded declines ranging from 0.7% to 1.61%, as well as a 2.16% increase in one index. Overall trade activity for the week included a total of 27 securities. There were declines in 11 securities, with Ansa Macau Limited seeing the largest decrease by 12.37% and Calypso Macro Index by 6.36%. 15 stocks experienced advances, to which Plubdeco increased 12.9% and Endeavour Holdings Limited by 11.46%. Other notable advances for the week are LLJ Williams Limited by 11.11% and GMMB Group Limited by 10.91%. Only 1 security traded firm, and that was Guardian Media Limited preference shares. We take a quick break now. When we return, This Week in History unveils a what could have been change in tide in the Caribbean Sea.
We want you to advertise with us. Join us as the premier business magazine and news outlet covering the Caribbean. Contact us today at 868-783-5094.
March 27, 1992, the fourth and final report from the Regional Constituent Assembly of the Windward Islands RCA was published. Initially formed to serve Grenada, Dominica, St. Lucia, St. Vincent, and the Grenadines, the 4 states were in talks to become a sole unified body, but in the end it was viewed that a union of the federal type with a central government could not work. It was agreed in 1992, after 4 meetings, that their chances of survival in the rapidly changing world situation depended on strengthening that cooperation. However, they felt that the time was not ripe for political union and that economic and political cooperation should be further widened and strengthened. It was an accepted view that economic and political cooperation had been taken as far as it could go and that agreements were often reached which were not carried out. While the OECS had already existed, during the RCA of the Windward Islands' short existence, it was served by Dr. Kenny Anthony, who would later become Prime Minister of St. Lucia, while then OECS Economic Affairs Secretariat, Dr. Carlisle Mitchell, served as its director. Back in March 1989, Grenada's nutmeg industry faced the threat of a broken agreement with Indonesia, which resulted in slumped prices for exported nutmegs and maize. The move came only 2 years after Grenada Cooperative Nutmeg Association, GCNA, signed a marketing agreement with Indonesia's Nutmeg Association ASPIN, which resulted in increased market prices for both nutmeg and mace for the 2 years following the agreement. However, Indonesia had dropped its nutmeg prices drastically low, making Grenada unable to compete with the prices and quantity delivered. In the period 1988, pre the broken agreement, to 1993, export earnings saw a huge fall from US $15 million to US $2 million in 1993. Sales in the spice aisle dropped, forcing it to relook how it marketed the exotic commodity, and into an agreement later on in 1992 with JHB's bankers entering the picture to offer a financial package, making it possible for GCNA to continue operations of nutmeg, pay for its current crop, and increase its sales. Historically, the major markets for Grenada's nutmeg have been Holland, West Germany, United Kingdom, Belgium, Canada, Poland, Spain, and Argentina. Although Holland provides Grenada with its largest single market of nutmeg exports, a significant amount of nutmeg reaching Holland is re-exported. That segment has sparked interest in some did you know questions there to our history teachers. Who knew there existed a possibility of a 4-state unified government right here in our Caribbean community? We pause a bit for a few short messages.
We want you to advertise with us. Join us as the premier business magazine and news outlet covering the Caribbean. Contact us today at 868-783-5094.
Well, that wraps up this week's edition of Carib Money Report. Remember to follow us on social media to stay connected. Until then, I am Kimberly Ram Calawan. See you next time.